would like to provide your email address, you will be sent a reminder for each class, and you will have the ability to register from your email. Anytime you can't physically make it to a class, most of our classes are presented virtually online. To join a class, go to the website 10 minutes before start time and click on the Join in Class link. This is our second semester to offer business classes. They are branded Empower You Business and are meant to help improve business skills. These classes are on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock and cost $10. At the end of our program, there will be time for questions from those in attendance, as well as our virtual attendees. We ask you to please remember for us to get a microphone to you so that those online can hear the questions. Empower You is a free university powered by donations. The costs incurred include website, constant contact, printing and advertising, virtual, some speaker and personnel expenses. To allow us to continue offering these classes, we always pass a bucket at the end of our class. Any small donation that you would like to give, we thank you. And we thank you for understanding the cost we try to cover. Please feel free to provide any comments or feedback on any session you have attended. Also, we value any input on ideas of topics or speakers you may have. You can reach us at info@empoweryouohio.org. Thanks for attending tonight's session. And now we're pleased to present our Executive Director, Nita Thomas.
Thank you, Betty. I appreciate that very much. And welcome here, everybody, tonight. And I am just going to go over really quickly a few classes we have coming up. You know, we have our business classes now. We have a few on Wednesdays that are from 6 to 7:30, and those are $10. But these classes are to help people who have businesses or maybe want to start businesses, and they just like to come to a few of these sessions to learn a few skills or see what's going on. And the first one we have next Wednesday, is increasing sales. And this will give you a few hints on increasing sales. And lots of times when you have a business, you're so busy running it, you don't have time to be proactive. So something like this is something you could go to for an hour and a half, maybe get some good ideas, and it would be very helpful. And the next one after that, next Thursday, is the Right to Work. This is Greg Lawson with the Buckeye Institute. Right to Work is a very hot issue, as you know, right now in Ohio. It's one of the hottest things we have going. So he's going to talk about that, where we are, where we're going with that, and also other issues that are in the legislature. So this is going to be a very interesting, because I think we're going to see a lot of changes that we haven't seen before. So we better be prepared to keep up with them. And the last one I'll talk about is March 14th, and that's Overcoming Addiction. And that class is going to be given by a young gentleman who I was lucky enough to meet. And this gentleman was incredible. He's successful now. He's a father. He's employed. And his passion is to keep people off heroin or to help people on heroin. And I urge you, if you have younger people, to bring them, because I think lots of times when somebody's been through it, their message resonates more with other people. So those are the only four I'm going to go through now, but we have 25 absolutely amazing classes. So if you'd like to look at the rest of the schedule, that would be fine. And now I'm going to introduce our founding genius, Dan Reganault.
So it's been a busy day today here at Frame USA. It really has been. I gotta tell you, Vice President Pence is one of the most personable, straightforward, honest persons that you'd ever want to meet. And when he met our team of people, our controller, Ann's in the back, I mean, he couldn't have been more conversational, more real than anybody I've ever met. It was just a real pleasure. The whole building, it's been transformed in about 7 or 8 hours. We've been living with 20 Secret Service people for 3 days who were in every nook and cranny here. And today they had like a bazooka on the roof. And it was like 8 feet wide by about 3 feet, 3 feet in diameter. And it was really, really something. And they just did an incredible job. It really gave me a whole new respect for what they do. But just to reflect on a couple of the things that he talked about. Mostly he was here to talk with Secretary Tom Price, who's the new Health and Human Services Secretary, about the future of healthcare. It was Tom Price's first meeting in public with anybody, and this is a big idea guy. This is a guy that's going to be the architect for healthcare for the rest of my life. He's a doctor, and I think it's great we have a doctor running the healthcare system of the United States. He talked about healthcare. He talked about keeping us safe, which included our military, and he talked about the importance of business, and that's why he came here today. And it was great. It's almost like a little bit like Christmas Day for me today, because getting to meet him, but more equally as important, our 13th semester of Empower You, and just all the classes that we got to offer this year. I hope you'll take a good look at them and come to as many as you can. So we're fortunate enough again tonight and he was here earlier today, to have Don Hurd here, who is going to sing our national anthem for us. Don, come on back up. And I'm sorry, spur of the moment. Don?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
So just a couple things more. I'm so excited about the program tonight. So Don, since he's been here twice, I've decided to build a little office upstairs for him, and he's just gonna, be a resident here. Let me tell you a little secret story about our executive director, Nita Thomas. Would you guys give her a round of applause? She's incredible. So we only found out about the vice president 2 days ago coming here, so she calls me up and she says, a few of you, we've got a few empowered citizens here. Would you raise your hand if you've ever received a plaque? I know there's at least 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, a lot of empowered citizens. She said, we've got to give the vice president an empowered citizen plaque. Okay, he's an empowered citizen. He's got to get one. So I've got these Secret Service people watching every move I'm making, programming everything I'm doing, counting every minute, telling me what I can do. Don't you do anything you shouldn't do. And so we got this plaque made, There was this little business meeting up there, and even though Nita doesn't own a business, I snuck her in up there, and she had a tent card, and she was sitting at the table, and she had the plaque, and we had a wrap so they couldn't tell it was there. It was secret, and at the end of the session, I stood up, and we presented him the Empower You plaque. He was so proud to get it. He was happy. He carried it around. He showed everybody, and it was really a great thing. And Nita, it was a wonderful idea. And gosh, that guy is an empowered citizen, if there ever was one. So thank you. We've got 2 quick giveaways, and we're going to do the introduction, so get your tickets out. The first giveaway, we're going to give away a book from one of our guests tonight. Betty, would you be able to bring that up? And we're so glad. Please give Betty a round of applause, too. She's a great board member that helps us. And the book is called If You Can Keep It, and it's by Tony Steer. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, stand up, please. And the number is, last 2 digits, 572. In the back. And your name is? Andrea, congratulations. And we've got one more. This is at Frame USA. This is a new product that we've just brought out, and what it is a barnwood serving tray. You can put a picture in it of your family or you, and it sits on a table. It's kind of a cool thing. So the winner is number 584. 584. Who's got up in the audience? Congratulations. We'll let you guys, Lou, we'll let you guys, you don't have to come down and get it. We'll get it to you later on. So it's great to see so many people here. We're using the balcony. So congratulations. Let's give our winner a round of applause. So you ask why we have so many. This is the most sessions we've ever had, and it's because we've brought on a new operations manager at Empower You. And it's just been such a pleasure to work with her the first month and a half as we've added all these classes. And her name is Amy Sander, and she is going to introduce our guest tonight. So let's have Amy come on up. Let's give her a round of applause and welcome her. We're glad to have you here. Thanks, Amy.
Well, good evening. I'm really glad to see so many of you here tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker. I've heard her speak before and was completely enthralled with her story. And she's one of the dearest people I have met. Her name is Sonja Stratman. Sonja was born in Nuremberg, Germany on April 25th, 1927. Hope you don't mind me giving away your age. She was born to a Protestant family. And in her first grade year of school, that's when Hitler assumed power of Germany. And at the time, she had no idea that the history books in her school were actually written in favor of his agendas. At the age of 10, Sonja and her classmates joined the Hitler Youth, not understanding what that really meant. As the war continued, her and her family's safety became threatened, and her family was forced to reveal the true nature of Hitler. And this changed her world forever. Over the next several years, the Bochmann family continued to struggle for survival in this war-torn country. And then in 1952, her family was able to move to the United States. So it is my privilege to introduce to you Sonja Stratman.
I'm doing everything wrong. Oh, it's turned on. I couldn't understand why all of a sudden. Can you all hear me? All right. I still have a German accent, and I cannot lose the darn thing. Every time I'm here since 1952, and every time I hear myself talk, I think, geez, why can't I lose that accent? Well, I was 25 when I came here, so I was too old to learn it, but I hope I can speak correctly. And that's what I want to do. I was born, as she said, in Nuremberg, Germany. Nuremberg was the city, unfortunately, that Hitler loved and adored. He called it the jewel box of Germany, and he got all his Nazis to come to Nuremberg, and I think the whole world thinks it was a Nazi city. It wasn't. I know my father wasn't one of them, so. But anyway, that's what happened. I'll let you know what actually happened during my life there. It was 58 years before I came out with a story what happened to us during the Nazi time. And it hurt so badly that I never discussed it with my husband. He tried to ask me 3 or 4 times, and he could not get it out of me either. We were married 34 years, but something happened one day. I have a childhood friend who still lives in Germany with her husband in Cologne and in Bonn. And so she came every year, maybe for about 25 years. She came every year to be with us. And this is the last year that she has not been able to come because she just doesn't feel good enough. But we are staying in touch with each other all the time. She came all these years, and we sang our songs out of the German sing book for years. And never, this happened never before. But that particular day in 2003, we were sitting in our sunroom in Madeira. My husband at the other end of the room, he always came when we were singing our songs. We were singing, and all of a sudden she stopped singing. I said, "What's the matter with you?" She said, "Read this." And I read what we had just sung. We apparently were singing songs we didn't even want to think. Part of them were Nazi songs. Some of them were just a German, wonderful German old songs, but part of them were Nazi songs that we were singing. We didn't even think about that. So she said, "Read this." And I said, "Oh no. That's what they did to us. That's what happened to us. Children, that's what the Nazis did." And we were talking in German for about a half an hour. I have a very patient husband. After about a half an hour, he said, "What is going on?" We weren't just talking, we were really excited about it. And I said, "Oh my goodness, we talk German. He doesn't know what we were saying." So I, by the way, told him, and I translated that song to him. He said, "I see nothing wrong. It's patriotic." "Patriotic for whom?" "For Hitler," I said, and I got really excited. Then for the first time, for an hour, we told him as much as we were thinking of, and for the first time you heard what really happened. I can't believe for 58 years it was sleeping inside of me, and I never wanted to think about it. One day I'm going to fall over. So from that day on, I was really informing him much more of all these things. And my girlfriend Laura left the next day, and I thought to myself, I really should tell my husband's family all that story. I'm sure they want to hear it, and our neighbors. And then I thought, what really happened there? How come we were stupid, we Germans were stupid enough to get Hitler in power. Well, I didn't learn that part in school. So I really had to go back to books and first inform myself. How did that ever happen? Germans usually were well educated, were hardworking people. Why in the world could somebody like Hitler get in power? Well, I read something that I just never knew. In 1918, the First World War was over. 1919, the Versailles Treaty was published. The Versailles Treaty absolutely scared Germany to death because what they wanted to have Germany pay back, they knew they couldn't meet that. And they were extremely worried about that. The Versailles Treaty really was a failure. So it was going on, then I read on, and actually in 1921 is where I actually also read in that book that Hitler and his Nazi party started to develop. In 1921, you had to pay 75 German marks for $1. 1922, it was 400 German marks for $1. In November of 1923, it was 4 billion German marks for $1. The economy was completely wiped out. And there comes that sly little Austrian, Adolf Hitler. He wasn't even a German. He comes and says, I'll get you out of your misery. The only thing you have to do is go with me. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people really had no income, had no money to feed their children, and somehow or another, some of them probably were stupid enough to go along with the Nazi regime. Hitler wrote a book in 1924 when he was in prison. He was in prison because he did some, it goes too far to go into it. You all have to read the book once. But anyway, he was with his party members, they put them all in prison. And he got a sentence of 5 years, and it was reduced to 9 months. He was treated royally in Munich in the prison Landshut, but it was right outside of Munich. He was treated royally. He had his own room, and people could visit him all the time. And one of his party members, Rudolf Hess, was the one that took the shorthand, and Hitler dictated his book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, to Rudolf Hess. And the book was then published in 1925. I know, and I didn't know all that until after the war was over, but my father had bought the book right away. And my father immediately said to Mother, this man will bring us nothing but problems. And he knew it right away. But then there was that little girl. I was 6 years old when Hitler came in power. And never anything negative was said in my house about Hitler. Well, I heard that they will have a torch march through the city of Nuremberg when Hitler became chancellor. And I wanted my parents to take me. I was the only child, and They were wonderful. They did everything for me. Well, I begged them, and my father really didn't like to go. It wasn't Hitler's honor, but they did take me. I walked between them, held their hands toward the place where the torch march was. All of a sudden, my father said, "This man will bring us nothing but problems." I got scared. I squeezed their hands and I looked at both of them. And Mother also saw how scared I was. Mother said, "Oh, come on, Helmut. Let us try him. We vote him out if we don't like him." Well, Mother knew best. I believed what she said. Father didn't, and she didn't herself either. But she just simply said something to make it easier for me. And from that date on, my parents never one time said anything negative about Hitler because it was very dangerous. You did not really have to be Jewish to end up in a concentration camp. There were many non-Jews in the concentration camp. And some of them actually were there because the children denounced them. They said something to the children, and I know myself, if a teacher would have glorified the Nazis, and I would have thought my father doesn't believe it, I would have said, my daddy doesn't believe that. And if it's a Nazi, off you would go to a concentration camp. The whole family would be gone. It was an unbelievably difficult time for parents to raise their children. The Nazis really glorified everything. They said, "The German youth shall be educated physically, intellectually, and morally in the spirit of National Socialism. And parents will be subjected to heavy prison terms if they object." When I read all this after I was in this country, I said, "Oh my gosh." My father knew it. I'm sure he read it in Hitler's book. Hitler had stuff like that in there. We read the book too here. The Holocaust Center loaned me a book and they let me read it. They let us read it. So the Nazi time was a wonderful time for me. I loved to sing, and I loved sports all my life. And that was really emphasized during the Nazi time, that the children stay healthy. And Hitler said, he said, "Whoever has children has the future." But Goebbels said, "Youth belongs to us, and we will yield them to no one." When you think about this, if a child says something about the parents not liking Hitler, they would just simply leave us alone. And I'm so glad that my father was smart enough. He didn't do that. So I think there was very, very little said about any other nation or anything. Germany and the Nazis were always glorified. And I had a habit of sitting in the evening after we ate dinner. We always sang our German folk songs, which I still now play on my piano, and I love them. One day I said to my father, "Fadi, why don't you sing some of my songs?" Well, they didn't sing any folk songs in the Nazi schools. They were all Nazi songs. Instead of my father saying, "I won't touch those Nazi songs," he says, "Sonja, I'm much too old to learn new songs. Let's just stay with these." Everything he said was some kind of a lie, but it made sense to me. I thought my father was old enough, and so these were the things that happened almost daily at home. When you said something, then they reversed it, mother or father. They just convinced me that everything was fine. Well, it wasn't very long after that. Well, naturally, it was in 1939 when the war started. But we really had a very difficult time with all the directions that Hitler gave and everything. We didn't. My father and mother did. So all of a sudden, in 1939, the war started. Hitler started the war. I can remember my father listening, being gone sometimes, actually earlier than 39, he went downstairs, 2 floors down. We had 2 Jewish doctors living in our house, and they listened to BBC. BBC was wonderful. BBC brought everything that was important that the Germans should hear. Well, of course, my parents didn't turn our radio on, because Sonja would have said, my daddy is listening to London. So I always said to mother, where is Fatty going? He's gone for half an hour. He is not home. Mother said, oh, he just went to the corner bar to have a glass of beer. Was not unusual for a man to do that. But my father went 2 floors down to our Jewish doctors who lived down there. Well, they were listening to BBC all the time. By the way, when people had no money at all, we had a large radio in our house. But when people had no money at all, the Nazis sold those small radios to them with very little money. So they could get all the Nazi propaganda. You could not get any foreign station in the radio station, so, but we had, my father just didn't turn it on. It was too dangerous. So anyway, my father said to them one day, to our Jewish people, when they listened, get out of here. You see the handwriting on the wall. They said, Helmut, we're Germans. We fought in the First World War. They're not going to do anything to us. My father said, don't believe them. Just don't believe them at all. Also get your son into safety. That was my only playmate in the house. All of a sudden, he was gone. They did send him to England, but my parents said to me, he's just visiting grandparents. I mean, everything my parents said to me wasn't true, wasn't the truth, but that's the way it happened. So now, in 38, all of a sudden they were gone. Our Jewish doctors were gone. We never could find out, although I still have hope that I hear something from the Holocaust Center that they can find out what happened to them. But there's another funny thing. It happened in 1938 when they took all the Jewish people away. And my mother, when she heard my first talk, never talked about anything to me. Father was dead at that time. My mother came up and said, well, you really gave a talk, but listen, I ran into our doctor's wife in 38. Now that was in 2003 when I gave the first talk. And she said, I ran into the doctor's wife in 38. And I walked toward her and I said, how are you? How is everything? And She said to me, don't, Tina, don't talk to me, don't talk to me. She had this Jewish star there, and Mother said she saved my life. If a Nazi would have seen Mother talk to a Jewish lady, that would have been it. They would have taken her. You have no idea how this whole situation happened over there. So it was a very, very difficult time for especially parents to live with their children. And how can a parent not want to clear everything and let the kids know what happens? But it didn't in my place. So somehow or another, then the war came in 1939. My mother had to actually work in a factory or someplace just something that had to do with war or anything like that. Well, Mother didn't want to go on the line in a factory. We had a store ourselves for a long time. And some people in Munich, Germany, wanted to open a store with nuts and with metal things, just screws and stuff like that. And Mother opened that store and was very happy that she could be in there. In the meantime, my father was a food expert, and he got drafted, but not as a soldier, as a civilian, because he knew all about food business. And the Air Force in Nuremberg trained him what they feel should be done with the Air Force people to get the food. And Father was trained to go wherever the Germans took over. And it happened to be that in 1940 they went into Norway and Father was sent to Oslo. So Mother was in the store and Father was sent to Oslo. It was something, all of a sudden, my mother was gone all the time, and they tried to keep me busy. They really tried, and Father went to Norway. And I was so close to my parents that it was really, really shocking that he had to leave or that far away. But was the war, and at least he was not a soldier. He didn't have to fight in the war. My mother, it's gotten worse really all the time with the food, and I was always hungry. I cried myself to sleep. I didn't want them to know how bad I feel, that we couldn't get enough food, but they knew they couldn't feed me enough. So they felt bad about that too. So she made a habit when she closed the store on the weekends, she went out to the farms with a train and walked from farm lady to farm lady until one of them agreed that she could work there half a day. And she worked, and then she got 5 pounds of potatoes. She comes home with the potatoes and she says, now we've got something to eat. Sonja didn't say anything to her except I thought, yeah, potatoes, pepper and salt. That's really what we had. But Mother did that. If she hadn't worked for that, we were city people, we had no connection to farm, and we wouldn't have had anything to eat. So it was pretty bad. Well, one day, some officer comes to the store to Mother, and he says, I want a pound of these peaceful, I can't get it out. I want a pound of these screws and a pound of these screws and another pound of these. And Mother looked at him and she said, where is your requisition? He said, I don't need a requisition. Well, he thought that dumb lady in the store would give him, and he probably would have sold it on wherever he could sell it. Mother refused to give him the screws, and he was angry. He slammed the door going out of the store. And that dummy, instead of just being angry, he went to the Gestapo, the Secret Service, and reported my mother. And she was right, he was wrong. You know, I don't know what ever happened to him. Mother never found out what happened to him because he wasn't supposed to get these screws. He probably wanted to sell it on the black market, you know, and would have gotten quite a bit of money out of it. But anyway, the Gestapo comes and interviews my mother. My mother told him the truth. She told him what happened. Well, she was okay then. They believed her. But mother was scared to death. If Gestapo comes and talks to you, you have one foot in jail and the other foot in a concentration camp. So she sent a postcard to my father. We could send little cards like that to the front, wherever. She sent it to Oslo and just said, Gestapo picked me up. And my father gets that card and he said, oh my goodness, what did she say? What did she do? He was scared to death. He takes that card and he worked, his boss was the general up there for the Air Force. So that was his boss. He walked directly to the general with the card and he said, General, look at this. My wife just sent me that. And the general said, Helmut, that is horrible. You have to go home. That was in 1942 when the war was really going on in Germany. He said, you have to go home. Well, my father tried to thank him profusely. And as he walked out of the door, the general said, wait a minute, Helmut, you know, you never joined the Nazi party. And my father started smiling. He said, General, you kept me so busy, I didn't have time. And they both started laughing because in a camouflaged way, they knew of each other that they weren't Nazis. It's funny, in Germany, you could do that. You know, you wouldn't point blank say, I hate Hitler, but my father had a habit of going, whenever he got in an office, he always put something under his right arm. And when he went in the office, he didn't say Heil Hitler. You were supposed to do that. He had something under his arm and he said Heil, which means hail. He never, and I think Father after the war talked to me about this, and he thinks maybe that's why the general really knew that he wasn't a Nazi. They never point blank said anything to each other. Well, David, tell me, what did I miss? Oh. He was so, I knew he would come up with that. Then, of course, also 1942, the bombings came in Nuremberg. It was horrendous. My mother and I were sitting in the basement. Father was in Oslo, of course, and she had her arm around me all the time. And all of a sudden she would say, oh, now the detonation bombs are over. She heard, you know, now they're throwing down the firebombs. And she picked one of the ladies that did that with her all the time. Let's go up in the attic and see whether there are any firebombs. And they did go almost always when the bombings came every day. They threw some of the firebombs out of the window. And so our house really was safe for that because it was a big house. But the firebombs, if a detonation bomb would come, we all would be gone. But they did that with the firebombs, flew them out. See, the women at that time had to do many things that normally a man does. But it just, oh, my mother did something else. She went to the farms, of course, and always came home with some food. I mentioned that already. And it was always potatoes, but at least it was food. So we did eat a lot of potatoes. I still like them now. I don't know. But I like something good with them. So it was a very, very difficult time. We kids were politically programmed. I mean, everything that's what the Nazis insisted on us being politically programmed. And how can my parents, my mother at that time, keep quiet when I constantly glorified Hitler? I mean, it must have been very difficult. I could not, after father was gone, we couldn't listen to the radio. Mother wasn't going to turn on London. So she really wasn't informed as well as she could have been. But my father took an apartment in Norway, not among the Germans. He moved in among the Norwegians, bought a radio and listened to BBC every day. And he heard so many times that Nuremberg was armed and how horrible that was for him. But when the bombings were, we usually sent a note to him up there so he knew we were still okay. On January 1945, Nuremberg was totally bombed out. And my father heard on the radio, Nuremberg totally destroyed. 1,800 were dead that night. 3,333 were injured, and everything was just simply gone. Well, he couldn't wait until he heard from us a card. So mother did send the same kind of card again. Lost everything, are alive. And he was very glad that he got that card. And that's what happened. We were alive, but we lost everything. I would love to have had some of those camouflaged letters that, for example, my father wrote never point blank what he wanted to say. He camouflaged it. If he wanted to say something to my mother, because the Nazis, not every letter, but they did open letters all the time. So he never point blank said anything. It was really unbelievable, but everything really was destroyed. So I don't have any one of these things. But also, when he heard that the Americans were coming closer and closer to our city, he wrote a camouflaged letter to mother. I want Sonja to have private English lessons immediately. I studied French. French was my major language. English was once a week. I mean, Mother followed through immediately. When the Americans came to Cincinnati, I was fluent. I spoke English immediately to them. And of course, it was a blessing that also I got, after I was out of high school, I got a job with a judge on the war crime tribunals because I spoke and I could do everything in English. I remember there was a letter he dictated to me that was to, and I don't understand why he wanted that, but it was to Japan, I believe, wasn't it? Yeah. And he said, make that a little flowery. And I could make the letter a little. He couldn't, but I could. I just followed what he wanted me to do. He actually ended up sponsoring my family to come to this country. And in 1952, he immigrated to Cincinnati. He felt Cincinnati would be the place to come because we were Germans and we could talk German with other people and so on. Well, to be honest with you, we didn't have time. We wanted to establish ourselves. My parents took night classes to refresh their English and worked hard during the day, and we just never joined a German club because we really didn't have time. We felt we are in America and we should speak the language we're coming to. And to me, it was heaven to be here. So, tell me, is there anything important I forgot? He has listened to over 200 talks, so he should know, but he won't say it. Now, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me, but I have to come close to you. I won't hear if you hear, darling. No, it's all right. Thank you. Anybody? Yeah. Yeah.
What that was like? The Hitler's Youth?
Oh, yeah. She was asking about the Hitler Youth. Naturally, I loved it. I loved the singing and I loved the sports. In fact, not only was, I forgot to tell you something, but I'll tell it. Actually, I actually was a Hitler Youth leader then. Because when I was 14 years old, my father came home from Oslo on an emergency visit. And when mother was taken with interviewed by the Gestapo, he came home and he said, I was 14 years old and I was a Hitler Youth leader. And he said to me, let's sit down someplace. I was so surprised. It was the middle of the war. Here he comes home. Mother never said anything about the Gestapo, that she was picked up. So my father said, let's sit down. I have to talk to you. You're old enough. And I have to tell you now that you were made to admire the most horrible creature in the whole world. And he really, and I looked at him. My demigod was gone, but I loved my father and I knew I could believe what he was saying. So this is what happened. I almost forgot to mention that, but he actually let me know that what all happened. And I said, how am I going to go and tell my Hitler Youth, my 10-year-olds, how beautiful the Nazis are, you know. My father said, I know you can do it. I didn't have to do it anymore. We had so many bombings. There was no Hitler Youth meeting. It was at the same time about.
Who has a question for Sonja? Right here. Would you say your first name, please?
I hope I hear it.
Hello, I'm Jennifer. You mentioned the songs, and how surprised you were at what the songs said. Can you tell us a little bit about what the songs were saying?
Were the songs we sang? Well, this is another. I love. Are you talking about the songs I sang with my parents or the song we sang with the Nazis?
With the Nazis.
Well, that is a funny thing. And maybe somebody who was in the army and comes back and has all that buried inside and it doesn't come out. I cannot sing one Nazi song. I cannot even think of them. And I guess I don't want to. I said to my husband, my goodness, all that the German folk songs come to me and I hear them and I can sing them. I play them on the piano and I cannot sing the Nazi song. If you asked me to sing a song, I couldn't do it. And I don't understand that. There must be something wrong.
Question.
Okay, my name is Gil, and my parents were from Slovenia. And I remember that my father said that there was absolutely no belief whatsoever that the atrocities which were being committed at the concentration camps were actually happening. At what point in your life did you actually come to believe that there was something rotten in Denmark?
Well, I did not know much about it. I think my father did because he listened to BBC. And mother didn't know much anymore because she didn't turn on BBC when I was growing up. So, but my parents know about the concentration camps. There's no excuse that somebody even says it doesn't happen. It definitely did happen.
We have a question right here.
Hello, thank you so much for coming. Bless your heart. My name is Jerry, and I was curious as to, I'm assuming that you were able to continue schooling as the war was going on, and I was wondering if you had any schooling in any religious education type things.
No,
And
we didn't have any religious education.
okay, and what about evolution? Were you taught? Do you remember if you were being taught evolution when you were going through school?
No.
Okay.
Hitler organized everything that we had to listen to. It was all Nazified. And I got even more angry about that when I read it after the war. I read the book and I thought, oh my God, he did all that to us, you know.
So you're, as far as when you talk about Nazism, were there any particular principles that you were being hammered with constantly in school?
Well, I think it was a constant thing that the Nazis are the thing. And there is nothing better than the Nazis, nothing better than Hitler. And we kids, although it was difficult for me then, when my father told me what was happening. And the funny thing is, I mentioned in the beginning, I have that girlfriend, we were friends since we were 3 years old. Her parents weren't Nazis either. And my parents and her parents were friends. She and I never told each other anything against the Nazis because somehow or another my parents said, don't talk to anybody about this. In fact, I have an aunt, she died, she's dead now, but she was 97. But before she died, I called her in Nuremberg and I said, Feli, how did my father act toward all of you? Did he tell you how bad Hitler was? And my aunt said, oh, Sonja, she said, I was so scared he would talk to an outsider and we all would be gone. Well, my father wasn't dumb enough to do that. He knew he wouldn't do it.
Question right here.
Hi.
My name is Leslie. I also have a question about your education
Yeah.
and the propaganda. Was there propaganda in your history books, for instance, regarding the Russians or even the Americans? No propaganda?
No. Only Nazi glorification. As far as that's the trouble. So many, we kids were just raised to glorify.
Right here, right here.
My name's Marsha. I just wondered, what did you do after the city was bombed and you lost everything? How did you survive?
Well, you can still survive because somehow or another we got an apartment someplace, and that's true. We didn't have any clothes. I have an uncle who sent some here. He lived here, and he sent some clothes to my father. And my mother was very good in taking old things, and I had enough clothes, I guess. We were in a basement, so we just lost what was upstairs in our apartment.
There was no food?
There was no food. Yeah, I had 4 hip operations and 2 knee operations because I had no food to eat when I was a teenager.
Who else has a question they'd like to ask? Right back here, Sonja.
Hi there, my name is Shannon, and thank you for presenting this. I'm an avid World War II historian, and so you've given a lot of life to so much of what I've read in books. Thank you. My question is, during the Nuremberg trials, what was the mood of the German citizens in Nuremberg? Was there a lot of mixed opinions?
This is an interesting question. What was the mood of the German citizens? Well, anybody who was against all this wouldn't tell anybody else. They only knew themselves. In other words, it was during the Nazi time, you could not discuss anything with anybody else. And sometimes maybe your husband even would tell his wife or some, but it depends on, because maybe he would be afraid that the wife says something to her girlfriend or something. We just had to keep our mouth shut. Oh gosh, it's so wonderful to be free.
Here's a question back in the back, Sonja.
Penny. Are you a U.S. citizen?
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Oh my goodness, yes.
All right.
I love
You have
our
a question too. We got a question. Sonja, question. Another question.
When I was in Austria, there were places where only it's like Nazi places, but only non-German can visit. So I'm curious with your background, are you interested in visiting those type of places to learn more, or giving your culture, giving what you've been through, you don't want to learn? I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, you know what? I love to talk to our children. I love to talk to colleges and high schools because they are our future. I love the kids to hear, to look out for what is happening, what happened to Germany. It was dictatorship. And I think it's very difficult for Americans to really understand how difficult it was.
We have a question right here.
Sonja, my name is Randy. You've obviously suffered during the war.
Yeah.
And you just spoke about having to have all these surgeries from some of the problems. What's the basis of your very positive attitude?
I really, it's being here and having a wonderful husband.
That's the right answer.
What else can I say?
And with me knowing my friend Randy's wife, I know that's exactly what she says about you too, Randy. Here's a question right here, Sonja.
Hi, I'm Brenda Tenley. Do you have any concerns of what you see going on today in the U.S. with the direction and our youth?
I want to tell you, I'm hesitant to say anything like this because I have my own opinions, yes, but I'm not here to talk against or for somebody. I just am here to tell you what happened in a place where a dictator took over.
Other questions? Right over here.
My name is Mark, and when your father told you when you were 14, how hard was that to accept it? What he told you about the,
I can't hear him.
when your father told you at 14,
Yeah.
how hard was that to accept all that you'd been like programmed into you about how great it was, and then how long did it take you to really just turn that off?
God, honey, I think I need you. I didn't hear. Tell me again.
Your dad, whenever he told you that Hitler was bad at 14,
Yeah.
how long did it take you to accept that, what he was telling
Oh, immediately. I loved my parents and I could trust my father. He never would say anything to me that would be wrong. He just, I myself saw a few things, but I never discussed it with anybody. And my goodness, Hitler was horrible. I have a white sweater on, and if he wants to say I have a red sweater, you better listen to it and take it like that. I knew some of those things, but my father was very well read and very smart, and he would never have said anything to me that wouldn't be true.
Like after he told you that, did it like a light bulb come on to you and then you could see what was really going on around you?
Yes. Yeah.
Right here.
Dick White, after the war was over, how long did it take and what happened as the world changed back to what it should have been?
Well, you are saying that now, and we left Germany in 1952, and Germany was really still in bad shape. So I don't know when it changed. Remember, I mean, the war was over in 45. Nuremberg was totally bombed out. So when we left, there were still many churches, many homes bombed, and they didn't have the money to rebuild it at that time. So I do not know when it actually, I think when I came back with my husband to Nuremberg, I think everything was in pretty good shape, wasn't it? But that was many years later.
Question.
My name is Edwin. When did you learn English? You speak English very well. I was wondering how old you were and so forth.
My father sent a specialized letter from Norway to let mother get a private English teacher for me, and I think it was in 1944, between 43 and 44. And she took over immediately, and I spoke English when the Americans came. I was fluent in English. In fact, if you try to speak in German to me now, I probably answer it in English because I'm just so much more comfortable with the English language.
Question right here.
If my math is correct, you're going to be 90 years old this year, is that correct?
I'm going to be 90 in 2 months, right, Darwin?
Happy birthday.
Question right here.
Hi, I'm Rick. That's quite an amazing story. Your attitude, that's quite an amazing story. And your attitude and your spirit, it's just so uplifting, and it's just an amazing story of survivor. I just wondered, did you do a lot of praying? Did your parents teach you to pray?
Yeah.
That sounds miraculous. Did you do a lot of praying? Did you pray?
Well, I tell you, when my biggest prayers come, when I sit in front of a good meal. And that's true. I am so grateful to be here and grateful to God that I have that. I was so hungry for so many years that is one thing that I'm always, very often, I just say a prayer quietly, because probably some of my people around me think I'm crazy, but I say a prayer when I have some good food. And we live Twin Lakes, so we have wonderful food there.
Sonja,
So
right up here, Sonja, right up front.
Hi, Sonia. My name is Kevin. I am a social studies teacher, and I teach young students. You had said that you like talking with students and that they are our future. What would you say to a young person to avoid some of the experiences that maybe
keep your eyes and ears open, and don't let a dictator march into our country.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions for this incredible speaker? One of our most incredible. We've got one last question for you right over here.
My name is Norma. When you were growing up, did they still have church services and things, or did it become like an atheist country?
Yes, they have church services.
When you were during the.
But you know, you couldn't even go to church because all of a sudden the alarm came. You could not really, the churches were not visited much because it was unsafe to walk and go to church. But they did afterwards, naturally. We really got it.
Another question. We have an exchange student who's from Germany, and she said that we had an exchange student that was from Germany, and she said that the Germans at that time, and maybe still now, have had a persecution complex. They have felt guilty for what has happened, for what had happened with Hitler, and that may have been part as to why they've got everything that's happening now in Germany.
As I said it to, I myself, when I was in this country, and I was asked about what happened, I had to go back to the books to see, how could that be? And some Germans have a sense of guilt that happened. I only know that my father was not a Nazi, and I'm very happy that he wasn't. I don't think I could give my talk if my father would have been a Nazi. And I am so grateful to him that he read Hitler's book, and from the moment he read it, he knew he brings us nothing but problems, and he did.
This has been a rare class. I'm going to ask for a standing ovation tonight for an incredible speaker.
Oh, no.
I have never heard such a story. Thank you so much for coming in for an incredible evening at Empower You. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to be here. It was great.
Thank you so much. We'll let you go. I just have one kind of announcement. I know Nina mentioned this, but the point of these classes is to hear all sides of all stories and to learn things and just become engaged in our lives and get empowered. And there's one class that I really want you to put on your calendar. It's March 15th, when we're going to hear from two of the City of Cincinnati council members, and they're going to talk to us about why Cincinnati is a sanctuary city. David Mann, the vice chair of the City of Cincinnati, and a second council member who we haven't spoken to yet has asked if he can also participate. I think it's one of the most important sessions of our time. It will take place in Western Hills at the Midway School, and I hope to see a lot of you there. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks to Sonja. One more round of applause.